The limousine gleamed under the harsh afternoon sun, a silver bullet returning to the heart of the estate, expecting gates to open and servants to bow. But when the tinted windows rolled down, Marcus, the billionaire who thought he owned the world, didn't see his legacy. He saw nothing. No grand pillars, no marble steps, no roof. Just a flat, silent expanse of dirt where his life used to be. Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. I am Mr. Zaha. Thanks for tuning in today. A kind words from a man who has seen it all. Marriage are not mostly bed of roses. Sometime you need more of. More of what? Can't say. Continue watching, and you will surely know what to do in situations like this. Kindly hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So let's get started. The chaos of packing was a symphony of cruelty, and Elena was the unwilling audience. The mansion, a sprawling beast of neoclassical stone and glass that sat atop the most exclusive hill in the city, usually echoed with the quiet hum of air conditioning and the soft steps of staff. Today, however, it vibrated with the manic energy of a coronation. Be careful with that trunk. It has Isabella's silk robes. The voice belonged to Marcus's mother, Beatrice. She was a woman who wore pearls like armor and viewed Elena not as a daughter-in-law, but as a clerical error in the family lineage, a mistake that was finally being corrected. Elena stood by the grand staircase, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She was wearing a simple gray dress that blended into the shadows of the hallway. It was a survival mechanism she had perfected over 7 years of marriage. Become invisible, and you might survive the day. Marcus swept through the foyer, his phone pressed to his ear, a look of immense importance etched into his handsome features. He was a man who moved through life as if gravity bowed to him. He didn't look at Elena. He looked through her, his eyes scanning the luggage pile for his golf clubs. Yes, the jet is fueled. We leave in an hour. The medical team is already in Zurich. Marcus barked into the phone, then hung up, snapping his fingers at a passing maid. More water for Isabella. Sparkling. Not cold, room temperature. Elena took a breath, the air in the house feeling thin, sucked dry by the 6 other people crowding the entrance. Marcus's sisters, his brother, his parents, they were all going. A grand pilgrimage to witness the birth of the heir. And then, there was Isabella. She descended the stairs slowly, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, the other gripping the banister. She was glowing, radiant in a way that money and victory made possible. She wore a dress that cost more than Elena's father had made in a lifetime, the fabric clinging to the proof of her status. The baby boy. "Oh, Marcus," Isabella cooed, reaching the bottom step. "I'm so nervous about the flight. Do you think the baby will be okay?" Marcus was there in an instant, his cold demeanor melting into a puddle of doting affection. He took her hands, kissing her knuckles. "The doctor said you are perfect, Bella. He's strong. He's a sterling. We don't get air sick." The family cooed in unison. Beatrice clapped her hands. A sterling indeed. Finally, a grandson to carry the name. The insult hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Finally, as if Elena hadn't tried. As if the 3 miscarriages she had suffered in this very house hadn't torn pieces of her soul away. They didn't talk about those babies. To the Sterlings, if it wasn't successful, it didn't exist. Elena felt the sting of tears, but swallowed them down. She had learned long ago that tears only fed their contempt. Elena. The voice was deep, devoid of warmth. Marcus had finally acknowledged her presence. He didn't turn to face her fully. He just angled his head, checking his Rolex. "Yes, Marcus." Her voice was steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "We will be gone for 6 months. Maybe 8. Depends on the recovery and the papers for the boy," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "I've left a stipend in the joint account for the bills. Don't spend it on nonsense." "I won't," she whispered. "And the gardeners," Beatrice chimed in, adjusting her hat. "Make sure they don't get lazy while we are gone, Elena. Last time I saw a weed near the hydrangeas. It was embarrassing." "I'll watch them," Elena said. Isabella looked at Elena then. It wasn't a look of malice, exactly. It was worse. It was pity mixed with triumph. It was the look a queen gives a beggar on the street, a fleeting acknowledgement of a lower life form. "You're so lucky, Elena," Isabella said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Staying here in this big, beautiful house all by yourself. It must be so peaceful. No crying babies to wake you up." The sisters giggled. Marcus checked his watch again. "All right, let's move. The cars are waiting." The procession began. Drivers hauled the Louis Vuitton trunks out the double doors. The family filed out, chattering about the Swiss Alps, the private hospital suites, and the gala they would hold once the heir was born. Marcus was the last to leave. He paused at the door, his hand on the brass handle. For a second, Elena thought he might say something kind. A goodbye, an apology, anything to acknowledge the 7 years she had given him. He turned. His eyes were the color of steel. "Keep the dust off the furniture, Elena," he said. "I don't want my son coming home to a dirty house." And then, he closed the door. Click. The sound echoed through the massive foyer, bouncing off the marble floors and the crystal chandelier. It was a final, sealing sound. Elena stood there for a long time. She listened to the engines of the SUVs roar to life. She heard the crunch of gravel as the convoy pulled away, carrying her husband, his lover, and his family toward a future that had no place for her. She was alone, but as the silence settled over the mansion, a heavy, oppressive silence that usually crushed her, something strange happened. She walked over to the window and watched the tail lights fade down the long, winding driveway. She didn't cry. The sorrow that had been her constant companion for years suddenly felt light. It wasn't just silence. It was space. For the first time in 7 years, the air in the house belonged to her. CTA, before we see what Elena does with this newfound silence, I have to ask you, have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were weak? How did you prove them wrong? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Elena turned away from the window and looked at the grand staircase. She looked at the portrait of Marcus hanging above the fireplace, his chin raised, eyes looking down on the room. "Keep the dust off," she repeated his words, her voice gaining a little strength. She walked into Marcus's study. It was a room she was forbidden to enter. It smelled of mahogany and expensive scotch. She walked around the massive oak desk, trailing her fingers over the leather chair where he sat and made deals that destroyed companies and built his empire. She sat in it. It was too big for her, but she leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Marcus thought he was a genius. He thought he was thorough. He thought Elena was a simple, country girl he had plucked from obscurity because she looked good in a photo and didn't talk back. He thought she didn't understand the papers she signed. But Marcus had a flaw. His arrogance made him blind. He never read the fine print of the documents he gave to people he considered insignificant. Elena opened the bottom drawer of the desk. It was locked, but she knew where the key was, hidden inside the hollow spine of a copy of The Art of War on the bookshelf. Marcus was a cliché in every way. She retrieved the key, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder. She hadn't looked at this since the week before their wedding, 7 years ago. Back then, her father, a quiet man who worked in property law for 40 years, had insisted on one thing. Marcus had been so eager to secure the trophy wife that he had let Elena's father draft the deed to the land the mansion stood on as a wedding gift, a way to merge their assets, romantically. Marcus had laughed, signed it, and thrown it in a drawer, focused only on the prenup that protected his liquid cash. Elena opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon, her heart rate picking up, not out of fear, but out of adrenaline. Deed of trust. Grantee, Elena Marie Sterling. Property rights, absolute and sole ownership of the land and all permanent structures erected thereupon. She wasn't just the housekeeper. She wasn't just the forgotten wife. Technically, legally, and irrevocably, she was the landlord. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Elena's face. It was a smile Marcus had never seen. It was the smile of a woman who had just realized she was holding a match, and the world was made of gasoline. "You want me to clean the house, Marcus?" she whispered to the empty room. She picked up the phone. She didn't dial a cleaner. She didn't dial a gardener. She dialed a number she had looked up months ago, on a lonely night when she was fantasizing about escape. "Hello? Viper Demolition and Salvage." Elena said, her voice clear and ringing with power. "I have a job for you. It's a big one, and I need it done before the winter." The voice on the other end asked for the address. Elena gave it. Then she added, "And bring the biggest bulldozers you have. I don't just want it remodeled. I want it gone." The morning sun hit the driveway 3 days later, But this time, it didn't reflect off the polished chrome of luxury sedans. It illuminated the chipped, yellow paint of a massive excavator and 2 dump trucks bearing the logo Viper Demolition. Elena stood on the front porch. She had traded her gray, invisible dress for jeans and a white button-down shirt, clothes she hadn't worn since college. She held a mug of coffee, watching the heavy machinery grind up the pristine gravel Marcus paid $4,000 a month to have raked. The noise was unholy. The rumble of diesel engines shattered the serene, bird-chirping silence of the neighborhood. A man climbed out of the lead truck. He was a giant, with skin like leather and a hard hat that had seen better decades. This was Miller, the foreman. He walked up the marble steps, his heavy work boots leaving cakes of mud on the pristine white stone. He stopped a few feet from her, looking around at the towering columns and the gold leaf detailing on the face. He took off his hat and scratched his head, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am," Miller grunted, holding a clipboard. "I've got to ask again, just to be sure. My boss says the check cleared, and the permits are legit. But, you know this is the Sterling estate, right? People don't usually knock these down. They polish them." Elena took a sip of her coffee. The bitterness was grounding. "It's my estate, Mr. Miller, and I don't want to polish it. I want it erased." Miller squinted at her, trying to reconcile the petite, soft-spoken woman with the chaotic order she had placed. "We're talking total demolition? Foundation and all? We can salvage the copper, the marble, the fixtures. That'll cover most of the cost." "Sell it all," Elena said, her voice devoid of hesitation. "The chandeliers, the imported Italian tiles, the mahogany banisters. Strip the carcass, then crush the bones." Miller nodded slowly. "All right then, you're the boss. We start with the interior salvage. Boys are gonna love tearing out that gold plumbing." He turned to signal his crew, but Elena raised a hand. "Wait," she said. "There's one room I want to start with." She led Miller and 2 of his crew members inside. The house smelled of lavender and old money, a suffocating scent that had choked her for 7 years. They walked up the grand staircase, the workers' boots clomping heavily, a desecration of the sacred silence Marcus demanded. Elena led them down the east wing hallway to a set of double doors painted a soft, creamy white. A small plaque on the door read the nursery. This was the room Marcus had spent a fortune renovating just weeks ago. It was for Isabella's son. It was filled with hand-carved cribs, murals of European countrysides, and toys that cost more than most cars. It was a shrine to the child that would replace Elena. "Open it," Elena commanded. Miller pushed the doors open. The room was breathtakingly beautiful, bathed in morning light. "Fancy," one of the workers muttered. Elena stepped inside. She walked over to the crib. It was empty, waiting for the air. She ran her hand along the smooth wood. She remembered the nursery she had tried to set up 3 years ago, before her second miscarriage. Marcus had told her to take it down the day after she lost the baby because it was depressing to look at. She looked at Miller. "This room? Got it first." Miller looked at the pristine mural. "The wall too?" "Sledgehammers," Elena said. "I want to hear it." Miller gave a sharp nod. He handed a sledgehammer to the younger guy next to him. "You heard the lady. Open it up." The worker hesitated for a split second, the sheer taboo of destroying something so expensive making him pause. Then he swung. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. The hammer smashed into the drywall of the mural, obliterating a painted sheep grazing in a meadow. Dust plumed into the air, white and chalky. Crash. Another swing. This time, the wood of the custom shelving splintered. Elena didn't flinch. With every strike, something tight in her chest loosened. The noise wasn't violent to her. It was musical. It was the sound of chains breaking. She walked out of the room as the destruction ramped up, the sound of tearing wood and shattering glass following her like a chaotic applause. She went to the master bedroom, Marcus's sanctuary. She stood before the walk-in closet. Rows of his Italian suits hung like soldiers. His shoes, polished and perfect, lined the shelves. She pulled a black garbage bag from her pocket and snapped it open. She didn't pack neatly. She grabbed armfuls of suits, Armani, Tom Ford, Gucci, and stuffed them into the bag. She wasn't stealing them. She was clearing the debris. She dragged the bag to the balcony and looked over the railing. Below, the excavator was positioning itself near the east wing, its metal claw poised like a predator. Miller yelled something from the ground, waving a green flag. The excavator's engine roared, a deep, guttural growl that shook the floor beneath Elena's feet. The claw rose up, blotting out the sun for a moment, and then swung forward. The impact shuddered through the entire frame of the house. The steel bucket tore through the wall of the dining room, ripping out stone and glass with terrifying ease. The sound of collapsing masonry was deafening, a roar of thunder on a sunny day. Elena gripped the railing. Her knuckles were white. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with a sudden, overwhelming rush of adrenaline. It was happening. The walls that had held her secrets, the floors that had absorbed her tears, the roof that had shadowed her existence. It was all coming down. She watched a chandelier swing wildly inside the exposed dining room before crashing to the floor, exploding into a million diamond-like shards. For the first time in her life, Elena laughed. It wasn't a polite, social laugh. It was raw and jagged. She laughed as the dust cloud rose up to meet her, coating her face, settling in her hair. She breathed it in, the taste of pulverized drywall and destroyed ego. She pulled her phone out. She had one notification. A text from Marcus, sent from the private jet. Landed in Zurich. Don't forget to water the orchids in the solarium. They are sensitive. Elena looked at the text. Then she looked down at the solarium, where the excavator was currently crushing the glass roof, sending shards raining down onto the prized orchid collection. She typed a reply, her fingers steady. Taken care of. She hit send, then dropped the phone into the garbage bag with the suits. Tear it all down, Miller, she screamed over the roar of the engine, her voice finally loud enough to be heard. Don't leave a single brick. The destruction had begun. There was no turning back now. Elena just gave the order to destroy everything, including the heir's nursery. Do you think she's going too far? Or is this the perfect revenge? Hit the like button if you think Marcus deserves what's coming to him. The destruction of a dynasty does not happen overnight. It is a slow, grinding process, much like the erosion of a marriage. Over the next 4 months, the Sterling estate didn't just disappear, it was cannibalized. The neighborhood, an enclave of privacy where billionaires lived behind 10-foot hedges, buzzed with confusion. Mercedes and Bentleys would slow down as they passed the gates, the drivers craning their necks to see the plumes of dust rising from the hill. Elena met the neighbors at the gate once, wearing a hard hat and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just renovations, she told Mrs. Vanderbilt from next door, whose eyes were wide with horror as a dump truck hauled away the remains of the grand staircase. Marcus wants a more open concept. That looks very open, Mrs. Vanderbilt whispered, clutching her poodle. Inside the gates, the transformation was total. The salvage crew was efficient. They stripped the copper wiring like veins from a body. They chiseled the Italian marble from the foyer floor in whole slabs, wrapping them carefully for auction. Elena wasn't just destroying, she was liquidating. She sat in a temporary trailer Miller had set up on the edge of the property, reviewing ledgers. The salvage value of the Sterling mansion was astronomical. The crystal chandeliers alone fetched 6 figures at a private auction. The mahogany, the imported stone, the gold fixtures, it all added up. Every check that came in didn't go into the joint account. It went into a new account. Elena Sterling, sole proprietor. With every zero added to her balance, Elena felt a layer of her old self shed away. She wasn't the scared wife anymore. She was a businesswoman, and her business was revenge. Zurich, Switzerland, month 5. While Elena wore work boots and breathed dust, Marcus wore tuxedos and breathed the thin, expensive air of the Swiss Alps. He stood on the balcony of a private chalet, a glass of vintage scotch in his hand. The mountains were majestic, but Marcus was looking at his reflection in the glass door. Marcus, come inside. The caviar is getting warm. Isabella's voice grated on him. It was a subtle shift. 6 months ago, her voice was a melody. Now it was a demand. He walked inside. The chalet was filled with his family. His mother, Beatrice, was knitting something hideous in yellow. His sisters were online shopping, complaining about the Wi-Fi speed. Isabella lay on a chaise lounge, her belly enormous. She was 8 months pregnant. The air was heavy. You've been on the balcony for an hour, Isabella pouted, popping a cracker into her mouth. You know my ankles are swollen. I need a massage. Marcus sighed, masking it as a cough. I was just checking emails, Bella. Business doesn't stop just because we are on vacation. You're not working, his brother, Julian, laughed from the couch. I saw you checking the stock for your wine cellar back home. Obsessed much? I just want to make sure everything is perfect for the return, Marcus said, straightening his tie. The 1982 Petrus needs to be turned. He pulled out his phone. He hesitated, then dialed Elena. He hadn't spoken to her in 3 weeks. He usually just sent texts with lists of chores. It rang 4 times before she picked up. Hello, Marcus. Her voice was different. He couldn't place it. It wasn't the timid whisper he was used to. It sounded hollow, or perhaps echoing. Elena, he said, asserting his dominance instantly. I hope you're not sleeping. It's midday there. No, I'm not sleeping, Elena said. In the background, Marcus heard a loud, mechanical grinding noise. Why chunk. What is that noise? Marcus demanded. Is the gardener using the leaf blower? Tell him to stop, it's annoying. It's just cleaning, Marcus, Elena said. Deep cleaning. Getting into the foundation. Good. Mother is worried about dust mites for the baby. Scrub the carpets in the nursery again. The nursery is taken care of, Elena said. There was a pause. A silence so thick Marcus almost felt it through the satellite connection. How is the baby? Big, Marcus said, glancing at Isabella, who was now berating a waiter. Strong. He's coming next month. We have the return flight booked for the 15th of October. Have the limo driver ready at the airport. And Elena. Yes. Make sure the kitchen is stocked. Isabella will want truffle pasta when we arrive. Don't mess up the sauce this time. I won't mess it up, Marcus. There won't be any mistakes this time. Good. He hung up, feeling satisfied. He had everything under control. His wealth, his heir, and his servant wife keeping his castle warm. The Sterling estate, month 7. The house was gone. It wasn't just a pile of rubble anymore. Miller and his crew had cleared the debris. They had graded the land. Where the library once stood, there was now smooth, brown dirt. Where the master bedroom had been, there was nothing but air. The only thing left was the basement foundation, a gaping concrete maw in the ground. Elena stood at the edge of the pit. It looked like a scar on the earth. We can fill it in, Miller said, standing beside her. He had grown protective of Elena over the months. He had seen the way she flinched when her phone rang, the way she steeled herself before answering. He knew the story now. Everyone on the crew did. They weren't just workers anymore. They were co-conspirators. Fill it, Elena said. I want it level. Flat. And then, Miller asked, you want us to seed it? Plant some grass? Maybe build a nice gazebo? Elena shook her head. She looked at the vast, empty lot that overlooked the city skyline. The view was actually better without the house blocking it. No grass, she said softly. Leave it as dirt. I want them to see the earth. I want them to see exactly what they built their lives on. Miller nodded grimly. Dirt it is. The tension breaks. Month 9. The baby was born on a Tuesday. A boy. Lucas Sterling. Marcus sent a mass email to his contacts. He posted a photo on Instagram, his hand holding the tiny infant's hand, with the caption, "The legacy continues." He didn't send a photo to Elena. He sent a text. He is here. We return in 3 days. Have the house ready. 2 p.m. arrival. Elena was sitting in her car, a modest sedan she had bought after selling Marcus's Porsche, which she legally could do, as the title was in the car, and the car was on her land, a gray area she was happy to exploit. She read the text. Her heart did not race. Her hands did not shake. She looked out the windshield. The lot was empty. It was a perfect, flat rectangle of brown earth, surrounded by the manicured green lawns of the neighbors. It looked like a missing tooth in a perfect smile. She had sold everything. The furniture, the cars, the garden statues, the gate. Even the mailbox was gone. She had packed her single suitcase. She had the deed to the land in her purse, along with a certified check for the total amount of the liquidated assets, money that was legally the fruit of the land she owned. She typed her reply. We are waiting for you. She wasn't lying. The stage was set. The actors were boarding the plane. The audience, the neighbors, the staff she had fired and rehired just to stand witness, and the lawyers she had retained, were ready. The tension in the air was physical. It was the calm before the storm. The silence of the empty lot screamed louder than the mansion ever had. Elena started the car, but she didn't leave. She reclined the seat and waited. She wanted to see his face. She needed to see the moment the king returned to find his kingdom had evaporated. CTA, the house is gone. The baby is born. The flight is in the air. We are moments away from the most satisfying confrontation of the year. If you were Elena, would you stay to watch, or would you take the money and run before they arrived? Tell me your escape plan in the comments. The afternoon sun was unforgiving. It beat down on the empty lot, baking the exposed earth into a hard, cracked crust. It was 2:14 p.m. when the convoy appeared. It wasn't just one car. It was a parade of entitlement. A LED SUV with security, followed by a stretch black limousine, and finally a luxury van carrying the luggage and the extended family. They moved slowly up the winding hill, passing the gated driveways of the neighbors, confident in their return to the top of the food chain. Elena sat in her sedan, parked across the street in the shadow of an oak tree. She rolled her window down. She wanted to hear it. The lead SUV slowed down as it approached the address. The brake lights flared red. It stopped. Then, the limousine stopped behind it. For a full 10 seconds, nothing happened. The engines idled. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, the driver's door of the SUV opened. A security guard stepped out, adjusting his sunglasses. He looked at his GPS device. He looked at the empty lot of dirt. He spun around in a circle, checking the street signs. He looked back at the dirt. He walked back to the limousine and tapped on the rear window. The window slid down. Elena couldn't hear what was said, but she saw the hand gestures. The guard pointed at the dirt. The hand inside the limo pointed aggressively forward, as if to say, "Don't be an idiot, drive through the gates." But there were no gates. The door of the limousine flew open. Marcus stepped out. He looked impeccable. He was wearing a navy blue suit that cost $5,000, his hair perfectly coiffed, his posture radiating authority. He stepped onto the curb, avoiding a patch of weeds. He looked at the empty space. He blinked. Once. Twice. He took a step forward, his polished shoe crunching on the loose gravel where the driveway used to be. He looked left, where the east wing should have been. He looked right, where the garage should have been. He looked up, where the second-floor balcony should have been. There was only blue sky and brown dirt. "Driver!" Marcus roared, his voice cracking with sudden, confused rage. "Where are we? You took the wrong turn. This is a construction site." The driver, a terrified man in a cap, scrambled out. "Sir, the GPS says this is 101 Crestview. This is the coordinates." "Don't be stupid," Marcus screamed, his face turning red. "My house is 6,000 square feet. It is made of limestone. It does not just vanish." The door of the van behind them opened. Beatrice, the mother, stepped out, holding a bag of duty-free perfume. She looked at the lot. She dropped the bag. Glass shattered on the asphalt, the smell of Chanel No. 5 mixing with the smell of dust. "Marcus?" she quavered. "Marcus, where is the house?" Then Isabella emerged from the limo. She was holding the baby, Lucas, in a cashmere blanket. She looked tired, her makeup slightly smudged from the flight. "Why are we stopping?" she whined. "The baby is hungry. I need to pump." "Marcus, tell them to open the gate." "There is no gate, Isabella," Marcus yelled, spinning around. Someone has." He couldn't even finish the sentence. The concept was too large for his brain to process. He ran onto the dirt. He ran to the center of the lot, his expensive shoes kicking up dust clouds. He stood directly over the spot where his study used to be. He looked like a madman, spinning in circles, grasping at the air. "This is a prank," he muttered, his voice trembling. This is impossible." Elena opened her car door. She stepped out. She walked across the street, her movements calm and deliberate. The sound of her boots on the pavement was rhythmic. Click, click, click. Marcus froze. He saw her. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. She looked taller, stronger. She wasn't slouching. She wasn't hiding. She was wearing a sharp blazer and dark jeans, holding a thick manila envelope. "Elena," he whispered. Then the shock turned to fury. He charged toward her, stopping just inches from her face. "Elena, what is this? Where's my house? Did it burn down? Did you leave the stove on, you incompetent?" "The house didn't burn down, Marcus," Elena said. Her voice was cool water on a hot skillet. It hissed with controlled power. "I sold it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the baby stopped crying. You what?" Marcus laughed, a breathless, hysterical sound. "You sold it? You can't sell my house. You don't own anything. You are a guest, a temporary occupant." "Actually," Elena said, lifting the envelope, I'm the landlord." She pulled out the deed. The document was old, the edges slightly yellowed, but the stamp was official. She held it up for him to see. "Read it, Marcus. Deed of trust. Grantee, Elena Marie Sterling. Daddy made sure of it, remember? You were so busy looking at yourself in the mirror during the engagement, you signed over the land rights to me as a wedding gift. You said, and I quote, 'It's just dirt, Elena. I'm the one building the castle.'" Marcus stared at the paper. His eyes scanned the legal jargon. His face went pale. That's just the land," he stammered. "The house. I paid for the house. The construction. The materials. Property law is fascinating, isn't it?" Elena said, taking a step closer. "Whatever permanent structure is erected on the land belongs to the landowner. But, since I'm a generous woman, I decided I didn't want your structure anymore. So I removed it." "Removed it?" Isabella shrieked from the sidewalk. "My nursery. My clothes. My jewelry." Elena turned to look at the mistress. "Your clothes were in the house. The house was on my land. I considered them abandoned property. I donated the clothes to a shelter. The jewelry, well, that went to the demolition costs." Marcus grabbed his hair, pulling at it. "You demolished it? You tore down a $10 million estate. Are you insane?" "I didn't tear it down for nothing, Marcus," Elena said. "I sold the materials. The marble, the copper, the slate. It turns out, your castle was worth quite a lot in parts." "Where is the money?" Marcus demanded, his eyes lighting up with a flicker of hope. "Give me the money. If you sold it, the money is ours." Elena reached into the envelope again. She pulled out a photocopy of a check. "The money is in a trust," she said. "A trust for me. Since the land was my sole property, the proceeds from the improvements on that land are also mine. My lawyers, Daddy's old friends, were very thorough." Marcus fell to his knees. It wasn't a dramatic gesture for effect. His legs simply gave out. He looked at the dirt. He realized that the ground he was kneeling on was the only thing his wife had ever truly owned, and he had treated her like a squatter on it. "But we have a son," Marcus whispered, his voice broken. "We have a family. We have nowhere to go. All my liquid cash is tied up in the overseas accounts for the expansion. I came back here to leverage the house for the next loan." Elena looked down at him. She felt a phantom twinge of the old pity, the old urge to fix things for him. But then she looked at Isabella, clutching the baby Marcus had chosen over her. She looked at Beatrice, who had called her a mistake. "You have 6 family members, Marcus," Elena said, "and a mistress. Surely one of them has a couch you can crash on." "Elena, please," Marcus begged, reaching for her hand. "I can fix this. We can rebuild. I still love you." It was the lie that broke the last chain. Elena stepped back, out of his reach. "No, Marcus. You love things. You love status. And right now, you have neither." She turned around and walked back to her car. "Wait!" Isabella screamed, running forward in her heels, stumbling on the gravel. "You can't leave us here. We have a baby. It's hot. Where are we supposed to sleep?" Elena opened her car door and looked back one last time. "I heard the Motel 6 off the highway has vacancies," she said. "They leave the light on for you." She got in. She started the engine. As she drove away, she looked in the rearview mirror. She saw the billionaire, his mistress, and his heir standing in the middle of a dirt lot, surrounded by luggage they couldn't carry, in a home that didn't exist. They were small. So very small. And Elena was finally free. Elena just dropped the mic and drove off, leaving them in the dirt. Do you think she was too harsh? Or was this the ultimate justice? What would you have done in that moment? Let me know in the comments. 1 year later, the air smelled different. It didn't smell of dust or diesel or expensive, suffocating perfumes. It smelled of salt spray and wild jasmine. Elena sat on the porch of a small, weather-beaten cottage overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It was a fraction of the size of the Sterling estate. The floorboards creaked, the paint was peeling slightly in the wind, and the kitchen was small. But it was hers. Every nail, every beam, every grain of sand in the driveway. She held a cup of tea, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the water in hues of purple and gold. Her phone buzzed on the wicker table. She picked it up. It was an email from her lawyer, Mr. Henderson. Subject: Final settlement and restraining order update. Elena opened it. The legal battle had been vicious, brief, and entirely one-sided. Marcus had tried everything. He had sued for theft, for destruction of property, for emotional distress. But the deed of trust was ironclad. The courts had ruled in Elena's favor 3 separate times. The email confirmed that Marcus's final appeal had been dismissed. He was also ordered to pay her legal fees. Elena scrolled down. There was a small, informal note from Henderson at the bottom. Thought you might like to know. I heard from his counsel that Isabella filed for divorce last week. Apparently, for richer or poorer didn't apply to the motel lifestyle. She's seeking full custody of the child and moving back to Europe. Elena set the phone down. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just felt a quiet, heavy sense of closure. She thought about Marcus. Last she heard, he was living in a rented condo in the city, trying to launch a consulting firm that no one wanted to hire. The empire he had built on appearances had collapsed the moment the facade, the house, was removed. Without the mansion, without the display, the investors saw him for what he was. A man who leveraged everything and owned nothing. He was a king without a castle, and soon, a father without a son. It was a tragedy, really, but it wasn't her tragedy anymore. Elena stood up and walked down the wooden steps to the beach. The sand was cool between her toes. She walked until the water lapped at her ankles. She thought about the empty lot back in the city. She had finally sold the land 6 months ago to a developer who planned to build a public park. She liked that idea. A place where children could play, where people could walk their dogs, where the ground was open to everyone. It was no longer a monument to one man's ego. She looked at her reflection in the water. The woman looking back wasn't the invisible wife in the gray dress. She was sun-kissed. Her hair was loose. Her eyes were bright. She had used the money from the liquidation not to buy diamonds or yachts, but to invest in herself. She had started a small firm that helped women in high-conflict divorces find financial independence. She called it the Foundation. Elena. A voice called from the cottage. She turned. A man was standing on the porch, holding 2 glasses of wine. This was Daniel, the local architect she had hired to fix up the cottage roof. He had kind eyes, rough hands, and he listened more than he spoke. He didn't care about the sterling name. He liked Elena because she knew the difference between load-bearing walls and decorative ones. Coming, she called back. She took one last look at the horizon. For 7 years, she had lived in a house that was full of things, but empty of love. She had been surrounded by noise but silenced. She had been told she was nothing without the sterling name. She realized now that the destruction of the mansion hadn't been an act of hate. It had been an act of excavation. She had to tear down the heavy, stone walls to find the person buried underneath. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the architect of her own life now. Elena walked back up the beach, leaving footprints in the sand that the ocean would wash away, fresh and clean, by morning. She took the glass of wine from Daniel, and for the first time in a decade, when she toasted, she meant it. To new foundations, she said. Daniel smiled and clinked his glass against hers. To home. CTA, what an incredible journey for Elena. From a forgotten wife to a powerful, independent woman. I want to know, what was your favorite part of her revenge plan? Was it the demolition, the clothes in the trash, or the final confrontation? Leave a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and redemption. Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.